So I left you with technical difficulties and this idea that Zerubbabel came and rebuilt the temple. He finished it up around 515 and did not want Samaritan aid. And so he's moving in this direction of strict adherence to the law of Moses. And we're going to see that trajectory confirmed when we find Ezra returning to the land. Ezra is yet another person. So we've had a couple of different people so far. Sheshbazzar returned to the land, then Zerubbabel, and now we've got Ezra. And Ezra returned like 50 years after Zerubbabel has been trying to institute all of this. And Ezra is one of those people. You may be this person. I don't know who you guys are. I do know who I am. I'm not an intense rule follower usually, but I have friends who are. And so when I break a rule, or when, you cut in line or you don't do something by the book, those people get really uptight. That may be you. Ezra is that kind of person. He is an uptight kind of person. He's going to return to the land and he is going to see what people are doing in Jerusalem and in the larger area. And he's going to be like, what are you guys doing? Nobody is following the law the way that they're supposed to. And so when he returns, he institutes the law of Moses in Judea, and he ensures that people are following the proper rules of how they're supposed to be acting and doing proper worship. And this is really important to him, and you can understand why. It's that middle part of the sandwich. It's that law of Moses. People need to be behaving correctly. And so what I'm going to have you do on the discussion board is read Ezra 9 and 10 and figure out what sorts of ways the people of God have been breaking the law. And this Ezra 9 and 10 deal with a really specific one. Namely, the people of God who have returned to the land, even though they've rejected Samaritan aid because those people are ethnically different, the people of God have been intermarrying with foreign women. And so these men who have returned in the interim between 539 and 458, when Ezra actually makes it to the land, these men have been marrying foreign wives because that's kind of what you have there. Because not everyone returns to the land of Canaan, and you've got to get married. When Ezra finds out about this, you'll find out in Ezra 9, he is really upset. He is just devastated that this has been happening, and he has kind of a hissy fit that might involve pulling out his beard, which I don't know. I don't have a beard, but I can imagine like what happens in my head whenever I hear about the pulling out of the beard is that scene from Hitch where Will Smith is making the other guy get his back waxed, and just some sort of an analogy there that just really troubles me. Anyway, Ezra flips his gourd and he's like, what have you guys done? You've been intermarrying with foreign wives. This is terrible. He pulls out his beard, he throws himself on the ground, and they come up with a solution. And the solution involves a strict following of the law of Moses, but it may not actually be an ethical following of the law of Moses. So that's what I'm going to have you kind of think through. Because this is a really complicated thing, this idea of marrying foreigners. We noticed in the Deuteronomistic history that Hermione, who is the Deuteronomist, who wrote the Deuteronomistic history, is not okay with marrying foreign wives. But the voice of the Deuteronomist and the voice of the author of Ezra are not the only voices that we have in the Old Testament when it comes to this question of marrying foreign wives, because we also have these narratives about intermarriage that is primo. People are like, yeah, this is a good thing. So think back to the story of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. We've got Rahab, who helps the Jewish spies, and eventually she marries into the Israelite people, and she becomes one of them. Also, we've got this story of Ruth, and we haven't covered her yet, but she's a woman from Moab who's not from Israel or Judah, and she intermarries with one of the Israelite people. And his name is Boaz, and Boaz and Ruth become the great grandparents of David, the most wonderful king that everybody looks back to and remembers. And so this is kind of a complicated thing in the Bible. Should you marry foreigners? Should you not marry foreigners? How should we react if people have married foreigners? There seems to be some tension there. And so that's what I want you to kind of think through as you work through what Ezra does, how he responds to this idea of marrying foreigners, and whether or not you think it was the ethical thing to do. So that's your next assignment. I hope you have a great time with it. I'm going to keep talking about Nehemiah. You can feel free to pause me and do the assignment, or you can just listen about Nehemiah and find out what else happens and then do the assignment later. So, we've got this strange thing where Ezra comes and reinstitutes the law and tries to get people back on track. He tries to get them worshiping correctly. He wants to get them to deal with this foreign wife situation. And the other thing that they haven't been doing is they haven't been taking the Sabbath off. They've been continuing to work through the Sabbath, and he's going to be like, no, you can't do that. You have to follow the Sabbath. So he's one of our strict rule followers. He's going to try to get people to follow the rules. After Ezra, Nehemiah comes, and Nehemiah is sent to physically rebuild Jerusalem's walls. Again, this is one of those things, one of those actualizations of the promise to Abraham. If the people of God are going to live in this land, they've got to make it permanent. And the first way that they did that, the way that Ezra kind of started us off, was to be like, well, we're going to rebuild the temple. They finally get that done, and then they reinstitute the law, and now they need to build a wall around Jerusalem to make it an established city where people can actually live. So one of the issues that comes up is that the Samaritans are still pretty ticked. They're still mad about what happened with Zerubbabel. And so they are going to start attacking Nehemiah and his men as they rebuild the wall around Jerusalem. And so there's this interesting spot in Nehemiah where it says that the builders of the wall had a trowel in one hand and a sword in the other. And they're like laying brick, and they're like, get away, quit attacking us, you Samaritans. So this bad blood between the Jews and the Samaritans dates all the way back to this time period. So when Jesus starts talking about it in the New Testament, you can be like, aha, I know why this story of the Good Samaritan was so earth-shattering, because they've been fighting for forever. So Nehemiah arms the builders, and they complete the wall finally. So you're kind of in this space by the time we get to the end of Ezra and Nehemiah where, oh, I'm sorry, before we do that, I want to show you a world behind the text thing. This is called Area G. It's in the old city of Jerusalem, and this is a picture of it. I've been there. It's very cool. You can see right here some of the remains of Nehemiah's wall. And one of the interesting things about it, when you compare this part of the wall to this part over here, this part looks like people had some time, folks could sit down and build a wall. This part, Nehemiah's wall, was built in haste because they really needed to get things under control because the Samaritans were attacking them. They needed a wall around the city. So this is just kind of a cool sidebar there. But what I want to do is take you back to that covenant sandwich that we've looked at so many times that you're very used to by now, and just talk about it a little bit for coming to the end of this Ezra Nehemiah thing. Even though the people of God have come back into the land, they've got land, they've got descendants, it's kind of iffy, they've kind of intermarried. Some people think that's a good thing, some people think that's a bad thing. And it's kind of questionable whether or not they're blessed. They've got the Samaritans attacking them. Things are just not exactly what they thought they would be. So the status of the Abrahamic covenant is like, it's a complicated thing. It's not what they thought it would be. It's not this glorious achievement that they've gotten. And then we've got this covenant with Moses, and there are folks that once they've come back into the land, they're just really trying very, very hard to obey so that things can get back on track. But there are some who are questioning, well, are you being too rigid about this law? Is this really keeping with the spirit of the law? So what Ezra ends up doing, he's trying to obey. But is he right? And there are some people who might say, no, that's not keeping with the spirit of the law of Moses. And then finally down here, this is the last one. This is the one that is most upsetting for people during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, because even though Sheshbazzar and Zerubbabel come back, they never actually get set up as king. And Persia remains in control of the people of God as their history continues and we move towards the New Testament. So the people of God never really get this bottom part of the sandwich, and this is the thing that's left in limbo for them. In fact, by the time we get to the New Testament, it's still in limbo. It's no longer the Persians that are in control. Rome is in control. But when Jesus comes on the scene, one of the primary things he's going to say is, I'm the king you're looking for. I am the bottom part of this sandwich. In fact, I'm revolutionizing the whole sandwich. So, this is a thing that continues to be longed for and hoped for, but not completely fulfilled, which is why, as I mentioned, the people of God are returned, but they're still in crisis, and they still think of themselves as being in exile, even after all of the efforts to get this stuff going the right way. So Ezra Nehemiah, cool story. The people of God get to go back to the land, and even though it should be this huge celebration, it ends up being this kind of, I don't even know, kind of weak sauce sort of thing, where it's just not what they thought it would be. So sorry to leave you on that down note, but that's what Ezra and Nehemiah is. So go ahead and do your exercise. I look forward to hearing what you think about that stuff.